to another season of A Welcome Diversion, our podcast with respect to recycling electronics and other items. We look forward to sharing with you some interesting news from Marc Saltzman, who was with us for our very first session. We are a not-for-profit organization. We're responsible for recycling end-of-life electronics across the country, and we do that in a safe and secure manner, ensuring that your data is protected and that we are doing everything we can to make the environment a better place. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce our very special guest, Marc Saltzman.
Oh, thanks so much, Cliff. Wow. And congratulations, first of all, before we chat, that Welcome Diversion is an award-winning podcast, earning 3, if I'm not mistaken, gold Marcom awards. Very exciting, well-deserved. And so let me just get this straight. I have it in front of me here. Industry Focus Series. You won an award for informational series as well as internal communication series. So I hope you're proud of that and the whole organization for your hard work that's been poured into this podcast.
Well, thank you, Marc. We are proud. One of the things that we did when you and I launched this a number of years ago was to try and reach some different audiences. The traditional method of getting to people through newspapers and radio and television reaches certainly a certain demographic, but we wanted to make sure that we were hitting the people who also would understand from a podcast perspective what can be done and how we can best relate to them. And this has been very successful, and so those awards are certainly a nice cherry on top of that for us.
Awesome. And we're aligned also, Cliff, and I think you would agree in our approach to disseminating information. So the EPRA, and largely due to the recyclemyelectronics.ca program, the campaign that you're looking to break down geek speak into street speak, demystifying this process that could be overwhelming and intimidating for people to properly recycle their end of life or unwanted electronics. Just as I, as a tech reviewer, I'm also trying to demystify technology. I know it can be intimidating, so I try to break down through all that jargon and make sense of it in plain English. So I think we have a synergy there in our approach.
We very much do. And, for us, we want to make sure that people understand that there are collection sites across the country, over 3,000 of them. That for us is really important. It causes people then to have the assurance that their material, their data, their electronic devices are going to be properly dealt with and turned back into materials that we can reuse in our environment.
And to your point, people may not know how to properly delete their information before they dispose of their old, say, laptop or tablet or smartphone. And they're worried that, and understandably so, that depending on where they choose to recycle it or donate it, that data could be at risk. It could fall into the wrong hands. But that's what I was most impressed with, I think, visiting for the first time an EPRA authorized recycling depot, how everything gets shredded down to its core bits. Like, so even if people forget or they don't know how to remove their personal information, their banking records, personal documents, sensitive corporate information, everything gets completely shredded. And that impressed me, just because I know how many people don't do it or they don't know how to do it.
Well, we encourage people as a use of life to look at reuse within family, within friends, and we know that in the hierarchy it is an important thing. But once you get to the end of life, once you've exhausted all of the natural uses for a device, we do ensure that it is turned back into, whether it's ferrous or non-ferrous metals, whether it's plastic, any material that comes out of there is potential a reuse to go back into the manufacturing chain. And we have over 90% of the materials that we come back, depending upon how they're measured, that go back into some kind of device, material, a function that can be reused. And so that to us is terribly important. And to your point, from a data security perspective, all of those devices are destroyed and turned back into material that gets shredded and back to base components.
And is that like the same for plastic, glass, precious metals? Across the board, about 90% goes into all new products?
A little more than, and again, it depends on how it's measured. Each province seems to have a slightly different measurement system for what you can count towards effectively being recycled. But yes, it is, and it's something that we're really proud of. And it causes us to, as I say, get this shredded material. And the plastics themselves are, in many cases, high graded. So we can sort them by different functions and be able then to take that plastic and have a higher use for the better quality plastics
Hmm.
than you would for some of the others.
And you probably don't see this as much anymore, Cliff. I'm guessing hazardous materials, things that used to be in our electronics a lot more than they are today. Mercury, lead, I guess cadmium, like things that you don't want to go into new materials. That's also properly disposed of by EPRA.
It is. You start with lead. It's an easy one to talk about. Cathode ray televisions, which we're
Yeah.
still getting back. Display
Wow.
devices and televisions, we still get them
Yeah.
back. Not to the degree that we used to, but they have leaded glass. And that leaded glass is then taken and sent to a smelter where it is turned into lead ingots, which can be reused so that they're
Okay.
being properly managed.
Right.
To your point, whether it's something like mercury, and mercury was pervasive in a lot of devices,
Hmm.
we still see it coming back in many
Yeah.
cases.
But you don't
We
want it to end up in a landfill
we do
for
not.
obvious reasons.
No,
Yeah.
we do not. And so we capture that separately as well and make sure that that is not going into
Yeah.
landfill and not going into our water table.
I think in our first podcast recording, Cliff, I want to go back, I think 4 or 5 years ago. I was calling those TVs the ones with the junk in the trunk, those big TVs
Yes.
with the boob TV, the boob tube. It was
Yeah.
like that big
Yeah.
deep TV. Certainly, that's changed now with much thinner, lighter TVs that you can just mount on your wall. In some cases, you don't even need to help with a friend anymore, unless it's too big. But in terms of weight, you could just like not even mount it, but hang it.
Yes.
I mean, it's been getting crazy. And I saw my first laptop at the recent Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. That was like under 800 and something grams. I mean, it's like, is this thing even real, or is this like a dummy laptop you would see at a furniture store that's just for for showcasing purposes or what have you, staging? It's crazy how light things are getting now.
It really is. And one of the things that we struggle with a bit is demonstrating our success. We used to measure our success in terms of weight captured. But because of your point, where a lot of things are lighter,
Hmm.
where there's a hybrid effect going on, where you used to buy a separate camera, most people have such high resolution in their phones with their cameras
Right.
now that they don't need them. So there's an awful lot of that going on, which means less devices and a lot lighter devices. It would take two people to pick up one of those
Yeah.
cathode ray televisions. So it really does make us challenged with respect to demonstrating the success we're having, because we are having great success and the number of units coming back are about the same, but the weight is much less.
Yeah. That's interesting. As a measurement tool, right? That you're right. The things, if you used to say, well, we recycle X amount of tons of metric tons of waste, if it's now everything is so much lighter, then that could affect, or at least the perception of your success. That's interesting. And it is true. Over the years, I've been covering tech for 30 years, and when I started, yeah, everything was super heavy. Laptops were 5, 6, 7 pounds. Ironically, they were meant to be portable. And then now, like again, 800 and something grams for a laptop. Or to your point, we're seeing more devices do more things. Like a smartphone is like a Swiss Army knife of tech, right? It's
Mhm.
your flashlight, it's your camera, your camcorder, your MP3 player, your gaming system, your computer, is essentially your GPS navigation unit. I mean,
Yes.
it's everything. It's your wallet. For heaven's sakes, now you just tap or your car keys. So I mean, it's doing so many things that yeah, it's probably hard from a measurement standpoint because they do so much and they're so much lighter for portability's sake mostly.
And then the other issue we have, of course, is that when things come back, they often come back to us in a broken state. So it's difficult to calculate exactly what it is when you get
Hmm.
a bin full of wires and broken bits and
Right.
parts, because in many cases they're not treated as well when they get to their end of life. Now, what kind of things are you seeing that are changing these days? I'm sure you were probably at the show in Vegas in terms of new electronics coming out, the CES. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so we do see some themes, from year to year. The one that's been pretty consistent has been AI, artificial intelligence, and to be more exact, generative AI or Gen AI, more conversational AI, but now baked into the hardware itself. So ChatGPT came out in late 2023, where it was software. It was like a service, and that still exists. Or Google Gemini now, Copilot, these other players, right? Galaxy AI from Samsung, but we're starting to see it on device, which brings some benefits. So laptops, for example, not only have now a CPU, the central processing unit, for the brains or the engine that drives the computer's performance primarily, and a GPU for graphics performance, important for gaming, for example. But now we're seeing an NPU, a neural processing unit that takes a lot of the heavy lifting off of the cloud and it's more on device. And there's some benefits. So faster speeds. You don't need the internet as much. Not so reliant on the cloud. You can often have these prompts and have it answer your questions, even flying at 30,000 feet in a plane without needing Wi-Fi, and also more secure. It's no secret that if you're typing in prompts or you're using your voice to ask a Gen AI platform a question, a large language model a question, it's potentially sharing that data with everybody else when they ask a similar question. It's aggregating all this information. So you could be inadvertently sharing like company secrets and things like that and it's happened. We've seen that in the past, or we've seen companies like publications like New York Times and Washington Post suing ChatGPT by, you know, taking their articles that they own the IP for and they're dishing it up as answers to somebody else without giving them proper credit. Or even if proper credit, they're not getting authorization. And so we're seeing more on device, more on device AI is helping stop that. It's more private. And then finally, more personalized AI. So Cliff, you could say, show me the email where I promised someone a raise, or show me the photo of my wife on a beach from about 10 years ago. And it'll parse through your data and it'll deliver what you want, very personal to you. So on the device itself. So there's lots of advantages. So yeah, one big trend is AI on device and all the benefits that comes with it. Another trend, Cliff, I would say is aging in place as the population is getting older. How can technology help our loved ones live longer independently at home? And so we're seeing smart home tech that's sort of to the next level. Everything from mobility aids and fall sensors, not just ones you wear on your wrist or around your neck on a lanyard, but we're starting to see millimeter wave technology where it's like using Wi-Fi signals to detect a fall and tell someone remotely, like a remote caregiver, what's happening. And just for convenience sake, using your voice to lower your blinds, to lock a front door, sensors that can tell a remote caregiver when someone is not opening the fridge in, say, 7 hours. And that's a concern to someone who may have, dementia like Alzheimer's. Or if they open the front door at 2 a.m., that could be suspicious.
Sure.
A child could see, a son or daughter or grandson or daughter can see that their aging relatives, or maybe there's something going on, they could be wandering. So I like all those, sensors that we've seen. So a lot of aging in place technology is another trend. And then, yeah, I guess those are the big ones. When it comes to smartphones, I don't think there's been a lot of innovation in the last couple of years. We see that even the big players like Apple and Samsung and Google Pixel, they're always a little bit better than what came before it, but not like, now AI is, again, all the big buzz, but I would say that not as significant in the smartphone space,
No step function in the smartphone space.
in
Well,
my opinion.
there's a lot to unpack in terms of what you said there. So let's just go back to the introduction of AI. You're seeing it growing. You're seeing it being built into devices. How are you seeing organizations react to it? So I've heard that some are embracing it wholeheartedly. Some of them a little more tentative, saying, we need to put up the walls here and make sure that there are no intruders and things that are going to happen until we really understand what's
Yeah.
happening. How are you seeing all of that?
Yeah, it should be both. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think a lot of companies are embracing AI because it can help them find efficiencies. It can help their employees do more in less time. It's a tool. Essentially, that's all it is, right? But hopefully there are safeguards in place, that there are some protocols that need to be, in place, some regulations, because you don't want to share I mean, this did happen with a big company. The first year ChatGPT was out, where they actually wrote some confidential questions tied to unreleased products and intellectual properties that became public knowledge very quickly. So there has to be some safeguards in place. So yeah, so training, definitely is part of that. But I think a lot of companies are embracing AI because they realize they need to, or they think they need to, in order to stay competitive and productive.
My wife's a teacher, and one of the things that teachers are struggling with in general is the plagiarism
Oh,
factor,
yeah, yeah.
because ChatGPT will now produce something that is
Hard to
more
detect.
difficult to detect,
Yeah.
in terms of understanding the voice of the student and what they've written. And this is going from, I mean, she teaches at a university level, but it's going all the way from grade school through to graduate
Oh,
school. And
100%.
so it's a real concern in terms of the safeguards and the boundaries that are in place and how you detect those things.
As fascinating as AI is as a tool that you can leverage personally and professionally, as I mentioned, to get more done in less time, there's a lot of issues. Accuracy, they call it hallucinations, where AI insists something is factually true when in fact it's not. Based on the data sets that's feeding it, it'll get better over time, but
Mhm.
that's a problem. Plagiarism is another one, much harder to detect among teachers and professors because it's not like that program Turnitin, that software called Turnitin,
Mhm.
that would try to match swaths of text with what's online. This is Gen AI. It'll generate something new every time you ask a different, it could be the same prompt. It'll generate, in theory, a different answer. Or a student can specify the length they want. Give me the history of Spain in 100 words, or give me, or in 1,000 words, or in 5,000 words. So it can get very hard to detect. So accuracy, plagiarism is an issue, even in the corporate world as well. There's also issues with replacing jobs, and I don't think anyone's really safe. I mean, as a journalist, there's AI that can write articles, so that could threaten my livelihood as well, even though I'm often paid to give my opinion, but still, so there's the loss of there's a few issues, ethical issues. Like any technology, AI can be used or abused, right?
So I guess, Mark, I'd bridge here to understanding what's happening in terms of the return supply chain and the end of life electronics. One of the things that we've seen studies from global situations would say that electronics is the largest growing waste stream out there.
Mhm.
And yet, when you introduce AI, there are studies in the US that say of the 60 million tons that are being processed there, 5 million are related to AI and what's going on there. So it is multiplying or adding, certainly, to the effect of end of life electronics that are going to come towards us. How are you seeing that?
Yeah, that's a great point, Cliff. Is that there is another downside to AI, and that is the environmental impact. To run these, hundreds of thousands of machines worldwide with the kind of computational power that you need in order to support a service like ChatGPT, or DeepSeek is another big one now out of China, and that this whole AI, war is happening too, where everybody's trying to up their game. That there's a cost to that, whether it's replacing the hardware, the graphics cards and the computation, like the actual machine itself, and then also the energy required to run it. We saw a similar issue with Bitcoin and generating coins and all that. It's a similar issue where it requires an immense amount of computational power. It's often spread out for redundancy's sake around the world. So this contributes to it. So I think when governments and other and businesses rather are going to be looking to update and replace their existing hardware with better, newer hardware to keep up with this AI race, that this arms race, that it's obviously going to have an immense issue, and recycling issue, or challenge rather, that I'm sure EPRA is up to the task, and hopefully these organizations will know how to properly dispose of this tech. But I don't see an easy answer to that, because again, we're in the middle of this like AI, arms race. So it's going to get worse probably before it gets better.
So it sounds to me like job security for both of us. I'll have lots to recycle and you'll have
Yeah.
lots to talk about.
Yeah, fair. I like that. That's great.
Well, thank you for tuning in to A Welcome Diversion. Marc Saltzman has been our guest today, and it's been a great pleasure to have him with us. We look forward to launching our new season with him, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Welcome Diversion is brought to you by EPRA Recycle My Electronics. To find the location nearest you, visit recyclemyelectronics.ca. The future is in your hands. Don't let it go to waste.